this way and I'll test it.
Okay, just testing. Can you hear me at all? Just testing.
Oh, if I can.
I don't know if you can hear. You can hear me? Okay, good. Okay, well, let me put all this junk down. Okay. Just wherever, okay. Oh, we could take our masks off, maybe? Be in, not incognito.
You want to mute yourself?
I don't know how to do that. Right there?
It's my pleasure to introduce to you today Deacon Bill and Mary Jo Holzhaeuser. It's been just a little over a year since they moved from Ashland, Wisconsin to Stevens Point. But this is an area that's very familiar to them because I'd love to if I had an extra. I thought I was doing pretty well.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful, bright, cold day to share in hearing the inside story of Deacon Bill and Mary Jo Holzhauser's faith journey. Just a little over a year ago, they moved from Ashland, Wisconsin to Stevens Point. But this is an area that's familiar to them because they actually met and married here while graduate students at UW Stevens Point. Deacon Bill in audiology and Mary Jo in speech language pathology. They spent the next couple of years roaming around the country before they settled in Ashland, Wisconsin, on the south shore of Lake Superior. And over the next 34 years, they purchased a home, raised two amazing children, and pursued fulfilling careers. While in Ashland, their home parish, Our Lady of the Lake, was an integral part of their life, and they participated in a variety of ministries there over the years. Bill was ordained to the permanent diaconate in 2008 and happily served the 5 parishes in the Ashland cluster for 12 years. What would make them walk away from such a great life in one of the most beautiful places in the United States? Grandchildren, of course. Their granddaughter Josie and their twin grandsons William and Francis, along with the Holzhauser's daughter and son-in-law Joanna and Travis Slattery, live here in Stevens Point, and they introduced Deacon Bill and Mary Jo to Holy Spirit Parish, something for which we are eternally grateful. The Holzhausers also have a son. His name is Wilson, and Wilson is living in Washington, D.C., and working as a law librarian for Georgetown Law School. We are so grateful that Joanna and family enticed Deacon Bill and Mary Jo to make the move to Stevens Point and make Holy Spirit Parish their parish home. And we are so grateful that they've chosen to share their inside story with us today. Let's welcome them, please.
we have an outline so we can stay on track. Yeah, we took a walk last week in Schmeekley Reserve and discussed how we were going to do this. And so we came up with this. One of the questions Mary Jo asked me is, what do you remember in your childhood as far as your faith formation? And I recall being a very bad CCD student. I spent more time in the principal's office than I did in class. I was at a public school boy. Me and my twin brothers, twins run in a family, we were part of a faith formation group there. I was not a good student. I flunked altar school, so also altar server school. I was not ever scheduled. My brothers were scheduled, but I never was. And my mom called the pastor and said, "Why isn't little Billy scheduled?" Well, he didn't pass. But I do recall two things that I learned during those younger years. One was from one of the sisters who told me that I could do anything I wanted to do. And I went, oh, great. Sounds good. As long as you're willing to pay the consequences. And then I thought of the principal's office. The second thing I learned was God's kingdom never ends. It's always present. I learned that in confirmation class, and that stuck to me. I do not know who these instructors were, these catechists were, but I thank them for giving me those two foundation lessons because it has had an effect on my life in that sense. But like I said, I was a public school boy. Mary Jo was a parochial school girl.
So I was raised in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Is there any bells with anybody? Fond du Lac? Oh, I thought I was on. Sorry. Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. My mom was a homemaker. My dad was a pharmacist. I had a younger brother. And I attended we went to St. Mary's Catholic Church in Fond du Lac, and I went to St. Mary's Catholic Grade School from 1966 to 1974. I don't think when I walked into Sister Alice's first grade classroom that first day that I had any idea of the changes that were about to start happening in our church and in our country, very soon. But it didn't take long. When I left second grade, I said goodbye to Sister Gretchen. Sister Gretchen was wearing what all of the Sisters of St. Agnes wore, which was a full-length black habit with a white starched wimple and a long veil that came down to her elbows and a very beautiful rosary that was hanging from her belt. When I showed up for third grade, the following fall, one of the first people I saw was Sister Frances Ann. But I almost didn't recognize her because, oh my gosh, she had this knee-length skirt and this very abbreviated veil, no rosary. I could see her hair. Who knew she was a redhead? And on top of that, Sister Gretchen had changed her name to Sister Susan. Okay, so things were changing, right? Things were changing. In seventh grade, one of my most vivid memories of my time at St. Mary's was the sisters invited the 7th and 8th grade girls to an overnight retreat at the convent, which was, of course, right next to the school. And I went, and during the sessions, the discussions and whatever, slide presentations, whatever we had, the theme of that whole time was based on the novel Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Okay, so it doesn't really get any more early 70s than that. And in the evening, we sat around and listened to albums. I distinctly remember listening to the Carpenters, and there was the sisters there in their pajamas with curlers in their hair. And what I learned, what I took away from that experience was sisters are people too. And in fact, before I graduated, I became very close with my 7th grade teacher, whose name was Sister Jeremy Quinn. And we remained close and stayed in touch for many, many years. One memory that stands out from 8th grade is Father Jerry, who came in once a week for catechism, one day he walked in with an album, and it was the Broadway soundtrack from Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and he played that for us. So, I know all that sounds kind of hippy-dippy, but for me, what I came away thinking was, the people that are in charge of my faith formation want to make this accessible for me. They're trying to make it relatable. They're trying to bring me in, and they did bring me in. So after graduation in 1974, I did not go to St. Mary's Springs High School because there was not the funds for that in my family, so I was a public school high school student. And what I found out pretty quickly was that outside of Sunday Mass, my church didn't have a lot to offer me as a teenager besides a CCD program that was under-resourced. So I became a CCD dropout, and I proceeded to follow some of my Methodist friends to the Methodist Church Youth Choir, which performed around the area and fed my faith that way during high school.
And then we went to college, and we met in college.
Yeah, we actually met at UW Eau Claire.
At Eau Claire when we did our undergraduate work. I chased her. Undergraduate work, yeah. And my faith life during school was, without her, I wouldn't have been anything. And so we attended Newman Mass periodically, but I was not very, very good at doing that. I asked Mary Jo to marry me several times. Yeah. She should have said yes. We would have been married a lot longer. And then she finally did say yes, and we made plans. And eventually we ended up here in grad school, and we got married between the first and second year of grad school.
Because we didn't think our life was stressful enough. So we thought we'd have a marriage right in between that first and second year.
But we participated in church services during those times. Our first year of marriage, we lived in 3 states, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Texas. And in each of those areas, we managed to participate in church. We sang in the choirs, and at Beaumont, we participated in the RCIA program. And so we got involved in that way. Eventually we moved back and lived in Schofield, and we were part of St. Mark's Parish there until we ended up moving to Ashland.
Through a variety of circumstances, we ended up moving to Ashland because we were offered jobs there that we couldn't refuse. But the problem was we didn't know where Ashland was. We had never heard of Ashland. When we were living in Schofield, we thought we were living up north. Little did we know, there was a lot going on north of Highway 8. So we went to Ashland and looked around and realized that the nearest Target was 70 miles away, and we were a little horrified. But we decided to try it. That we figured we could do anything for a year, So within a year, we were looking for a house. And we ended up staying there for 34 years. And one of the reasons that was true was that we were so welcomed by our parish there. We joined St. Agnes Parish, which later merged with Holy Family Parish and became Our Lady of the Lake. And we were involved in all kinds of things, just all the time. And pretty soon in 1988 came along our son, and then in 1990 came our daughter. And then the next thing you know, they're enrolled in Our Lady of the Lake Catholic School. And things were kind of rolling along. Everything was going great.
But I think for me, things were not settled for me, my faith journey. And I mentioned to Mary Jo, I said, I really would like to maybe make a retreat or do something, because something is missing in my life. And maybe 3 or 4 months later, Mary Jo said, there's some guy talking about a retreat after Mass. You better pay attention to that. And it was about Cursillo. And so I decided that I would make a Cursillo. This was in 1997?
96 or 97.
96 or 97, I can't remember for sure. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with this kind of retreat.
Cursillo,
But
yeah.
Cursillo, you're Cursisis? Okay. But it's a 3-day event. And at the Superior Diocese, they don't want you to drive. Your sponsor takes you there. But my job had me real close to where in Rhinelander where I was at, so it didn't make sense for me to drive back to Ashland, and so I drove myself. And I got there the first day and it was fine. Got there the second day, Friday. I was kind of, okay, I'll keep listening. And then Saturday, in the schedule, there's a huge break. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm not liking this. I'm not liking this at all. And during the break, I just was walking around and I got to my car. And I got in my car saying, oh, I'm just going to see how the Badgers are doing. and I was going to leave. I was going to leave the event because I just was not liking what I was hearing. And I turned the ignition and I sat there and I turned it off and I came back. And I participated in the rest of the weekend, and it changed my life. If it was not for Cursillo, I wouldn't be a deacon. There's no question about that. It's the grouping afterwards, the community that follows the Cursillo event that really made a difference in my life. And so Mary Jo made the Cursillo about a year later or two.
Yeah. Somebody said that, years, maybe 100 years before Zacchaeus knew that he desperately needed to see Jesus and desperately needed to be seen by Jesus, God made sure that sycamore tree was planted, huh? I think Cursillo was our sycamore tree that kind of supported us, because starting in 1998, we went through, when I look back on it now, I really think it was a rolling trauma. In 1998, unexpectedly, my dad died. So I was 38. Our kids were 8 and 10. Then in 1999, right around Easter time, Bill's mom was diagnosed with cancer. She died right around Mother's Day, so about a month later. 2000, my younger brother, died of accidental overdose of prescription drugs and alcohol. So that was 2000. In 2001, we all had 9/11. And that same fall, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she passed away in 2002. So it was like we couldn't recover from something before the next thing came. And those of you who have had those kind of times in your life know it's just, you can't really catch your breath. And once again, Cursillo and our friends and our community at Our Lady of the Lake just really held us up and got us through that. So we were very happy to have that. I don't know how that we would have made it through all of that. And so I'm going to let Bill pick up.
Well, so, in addition, we had other friends passing and all of that, and it was really a challenge in our lives. But again, without our faith in our friends, we would not have been able to make that. And throughout that whole process, I've been considering the diaconate. Okay? And it was all prayer and myself, and I was considering that and discerning, is this a process that I should be participating? Is God calling me to do this? And so that was a while. We participated in a lot of other cursillos, and we were team leaders, and we did talks and things like that. And during that time, people pray for us and so on before we have a talk. And it was my turn to do a talk, and during prayer time, or during some time, Jim Montgomery asked me, "Hey, Bill, have you ever considered being a deacon?" And I did what any ordinary, good-minded audiologist should do. I pretended I didn't hear him. But he persisted. He said, "Hey, I asked you a question." And that was the first time I said out loud that I had considered it. So I called the office, they sent me the packet, and I put it on my desk. And it sat there for a couple years. And I called again, eventually, and they said, "I sent you a packet already." I said, "Yeah, I know, but I lost it," or whatever. So they sent it again, and I had to get sponsors, references, fill out questionnaires, and do surveys, and my wife had to do that, all of those too, and I got all of that in my packet, and I put it on my desk, and it sat there for not a year, just a few weeks actually. But when I took the packet one morning to the post office, and I take it, and here it is, here's the packet in my hand, and I go up to the post office before work, and I open the mailbox, and I do this. Go back, step back. I did that about 3 or 4 times. I think if anybody was walking along that time at 8 in the morning or whatever time it was, they would have thought, what is this guy doing? Drop it in. And then I go to work, and Mabel is waiting for me. She's my first patient. I take her back. She sits down, and she goes, "Hey, Bill, when are you going to be a deacon?" If I needed affirmation, I got it with that question from one of my patients and one of our parishioners. And then I proceeded with the formation program, and Mary Jo and I succeeded with that.
I don't know how many of you have ever been to an ordination, but one of the things that the Catholic Church gets right is ordination. And his ordination was just beautiful at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Superior, Wisconsin. So in the meantime, while he was going through this discernment process, I was getting some kind of call as well. In the 90s, sometime in the 90s, our parish went through the Renew process. Does that sound familiar to you? So one outgrowth of the Renew process was a Social Concerns Committee, and one project of the Social Concerns Committee was a project called Project St. Nick, and it happened during Advent. We collected, just little items to distribute to folks that maybe weren't going to be home for Christmas. They were in behavioral health, or they were in the nursing homes, or they were in the jail. And so I would help coordinate that. And somewhere along the line, I started thinking, we shouldn't be just going into Ashland County Jail once a year with these presents. Somebody should really be taking communion to the jail. And I sat with that for a while. And then maybe a year later, I started thinking, maybe I should be taking communion to the jail. So I went to my pastor, who was a lovely man and had known us since we came to Ashland. And I said, this was probably in the year maybe 2000. Right in the middle was everybody was dropping dead on us, right in the middle of that. Father, I'm thinking maybe I should be taking communion to the jail. And he looked at me, and he kind of, I don't want to say he discouraged me, but I think he probably felt like, A, you have no qualifications for this, and he was right. And B, I had a lot on my plate. There was a lot going on in my life. So he kind of said, But then in 2002, we got a different pastor. And that same thought was still in my head. It hadn't gone anywhere. So I went to him and said, I'm thinking I should be taking communion to the jail. And he said, sure, go for it. Why not? That was as much guidance as he gave me. In Cursillo, there's a notion that God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. I was a poster child for that. I'm 42 years old. I had a couple of middle schoolers or whatever. I had never been in a jail as a visitor or an inmate. I had never known anyone in jail. The Ashland County Jail it holds probably 50 or 60 inmates max, and at any given time, a third to a half of them is Native American. I didn't have just a ton of experience there either, but I went to the jail, And I learned a lot. I ended up going there for, well, I guess I was there for like 18 years until COVID, until I couldn't go anymore. And I just want to, and really I connect that whole part to all of that suffering that we went through. Suffering cracks you open, huh? And it makes you vulnerable. And it makes you, for me, it made not only my faith, but my empathy, my capacity for empathy got a lot broader and a lot deeper. And I really think that's where that call came from. I don't know that I would have been open to it otherwise. God really does take bad things and suffering, and if we cooperate with him, he really can make good come out of that. And I learned that and learned it and learned it. So anyway, there I am at the jail. And I'm sure if I look back when I started, I probably made a lot of mistakes, but I learned, I was taught actually. I learned a lot, and my faith was stretched every week. I just want to tell you one story, just one thing that would give you an idea of how it stretched my faith. Whenever I would go to the jail, I would see the inmates block by block, so maybe 4 or 5 people at a time, and maybe do that 4 or 5 times in an evening. So it was generally a small enough group. And because I worked at the high school for many years, there would be familiar faces. Sometimes I would see kids that I call them kids, okay, young adults, that either I had had them as students or I just had known them in high school. So one time, I don't know, maybe not too long after I started, in came Shane. And I remembered Shane. He had not been a student of mine because he was way too good of a communicator to be a student of mine. But I remembered him from high school because he had such a big personality. You always knew if he was in the hallway. Big smile, funny, had some behavioral issues, and when he got out of school, made some bad choices. So he was kind of a frequent flyer at Ashland County Jail. But he always came down for communion, and he always was very respectful. And just so you know, the way that I approached folks was always to say to them, we would read the gospel usually from Sunday, and we would have our own little prayers of the faithful. And when it came time for communion, I would say to everyone, the people that make the rules in my church would say that if you are not Catholic, you should not receive communion. However, I can't tell by looking at you if you're Catholic or not, and I don't check ID. That's between you and God. If you tell me you want communion, I'm going to give you communion. And I ran that by every pastor I ever had and got the okay. So Shane always took communion. In 2017, Shane was beaten and stabbed to death by a couple of guys that he probably had known his whole life. Just made the wrong guys mad, I guess. I don't know. One of them, I think, was already on probation or something, and ended up going straight to prison, so I didn't really have any interaction with him. But the other one, who was Shane's same age, which I think was probably 39 when he died, I went to the jail not too long after Shane was killed, and there's the other person that's accused of killing him, sitting pretty much in the same spot that Shane used to always sit in. And when it came time for communion, I gave him communion. My faith was stretched every single week. And I'm thankful for that. I miss it. I miss not being there. It was hard when COVID came and when I couldn't go anymore. Yeah. But I take that back to that time of suffering and that time of trial that we had. I don't think that I would have responded to that call had I not been broken open and made vulnerable by pain.
Faith gives us the strength to do the things we don't think we can do.
Yeah.
It gives us that strength. we'll always grow with that. And I know I have, and I know Mary Jo has, and I know our kids have.
Yeah.
And by example, I think we hopefully can express that, and you can learn from that as well. Where the diaconate led me to, besides the deacon duties, was I became involved with the food pantry and benevolence program at Ashland called the Brick Ministry. And so I was on board, and for several years I was president and ran that program. And that was fine, but the part that I really enjoyed or really got the most out of was when I was face to face with people, walking them through the food pantry, and you see the same people each week, and so you get to know them, get to know their story, get to know how their family is doing and what their likes and dislikes are. Oh yeah, you don't like that kind of food, whatever it is. But it's just being present and being available and sharing that with people. I think at times you see somebody there that you say, wow, I didn't realize that you were in this kind of position. And so there's a lot of need out there. And so I was happy to be a part of that, you know, and that we grew with that. I think, did you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I think one thing I've learned, you know, you do learn as you get older. you do eventually learn some things. And one of the things I learned for myself is that I do better if I belong to a faith-sharing group of some kind that I can meet with on a regular basis. And when I was able to retire at age 55 from the school district and was invited to join a group of women who some people would call a bunch of grandmas, but we like to call ourselves wisdom figures, who meet and are ostensibly a book discussion group, okay, or a Bible study group. But they're really a faith-sharing group. And so it was very nice to be welcomed by them, and boy, did that help me get through the pandemic and the move. You know, we left behind a lot of things when we left Ashland, and we left in the middle of the pandemic, so we really didn't get to say goodbye. You know, we really didn't. And so it was very nice to be able to have this group of women that I could still meet with, that I could still talk to, who knew me. And so we still meet, and I can't imagine when we'll stop. Now, several of us have moved away, and so we're in, like, I think we counted, we're in 3 or 4 different dioceses in Wisconsin now, but we're still meeting every week. And that's been a blessing. You know, it's really helped that transition for me.
So when we moved to Stevens Point and got involved with this parish, I wasn't sure what to expect because of course, the pandemic was happening. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what was expected of me, and all of those things. But like we've done in all the parishes that we've been involved with, and in all of our moves, you get involved. We get involved, and so we started up right away with the RCIA, doing it online, and we still are doing that this year too. And I'm learning who the other deacons are in this community, and hoping to get to meet those people and have a kind of a bonding kind of thing going on there. The other thing we're involved with, of course, is Alpha. At least I was involved with Alpha. We'll get her going somewhere along the line. And that has been a wonderful, wonderful gift for me. And being family life director also got me just jumped right into this parish. But it's all with good people, and it gives me strength in my faith. It also challenges me. How can I be better? How can I do this better? How can I be closer to God? These people help me with that. One of the things that really, I am so pleased, we were walking downtown, before all of this, and just kind of checking out the community. And it was winter, and we saw that Franciscan downtown sign, and we kind of went, what is that? You know, we kind of looked in the window.
Well, and the word Franciscan is like bait for us because Our Lady of the Lake and that whole area was a Franciscan mission area and was served by the Franciscans for 130 years up until like about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So we were really steeped in kind of that Franciscan vibe. And so when we saw that word, it was like, oh.
Yeah. And we kind of learned what it was, and then there was a call in the bulletin, so we started volunteering there. And it's been about maybe 7 or 8 months that we've been going, something like that. And I tell you, it's just a joy talking to these people that I would never talk to, never have the opportunity to. Or if I did, I don't know, maybe walk on the other side of the street. But here, these are real people. As John Sweeney would say, look at their eyes. Look at them. They're real people, God's chosen people. And they're valued. And they are good. And they're just in the circumstances in their lives that it's just what it is. And so we respect them, these people, the visitors that come here to St. Francis downtown, and we talk. And we give them food, and we talk some more, and we share, and they tell their stories, and we tell our stories, and reminisce about movies and books and whatever else. And it's just, they all have goals, they all have things that you know, we want to support, and we want to help them in just to feel God's presence in their lives, how difficult that can be for some people. And they come to us and they share with us those kinds of things. And so, and that's my gift, at least to help, one of my goals anyway, to help people like that, to all of us, to be closer to Christ and closer to God, and just sharing opportunities along those lines. I think that is a thing. Do you want to add?
The only thing I want to say is that when I walked into Franciscans downtown, I felt so welcomed and so, I don't know, valued, and unconditionally. You know, nobody said, "What are you doing here? What are you, who are you?" It was just very much, "Oh, you're here? Great, join in." And that's how I felt in this parish. You all are doing a very nice job of welcoming people. You do a very nice job of being open and accepting. So, keep up the good work.
When we first, when Joanna first moved down here and their family was here, and we'd come visit, we'd come to this parish to attend Mass. And always a smiling face, a welcome, let me introduce me to you, and introductions were made. Always felt welcomed. And that was one of the reasons that we decided to join this parish. And not just because our daughter is here, because we always, even before I was known as a deacon here, we always felt welcomed. And that just spreads that out, doesn't it? When you feel that love from a community like here, you just want to take that outside and share that with other people. And that's one of the things that we're doing. We're trying to do anyway. And so this is a blessing. So that's our insight. I don't know if there are any questions.
You all are always so good to have questions. Are there any questions for Deacon Bill and Mary Jo? No question, but
okay.
no question, but we're glad that they're here. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, we're glad we're here too.
Yeah.
This will be, one of the things after I retired, I have a lot of time to do things, and it kind of gives me the opportunity to actually be more of a deacon than when I'm working, 60 hours a week. It's hard to do that. And this is such an opportunity, and so I welcome that opportunity to do that. We both do in our retirement. So we love you guys. We feel very welcomed here, and just appreciate all the support that you have given us. in all the things that you have done for us in our growth, in our spirituality. So thank you.
Thanks.